Welcome back to another episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Dozer, and if you're new to the show, the mission here is to expose the quacks and gimmicks in the marketing industry while featuring some great marketers and entrepreneurs along the way. Now, in this episode, I'm really excited to introduce my guest, Eric Jorgenson. Eric is the CEO of Scribe Media, well-known author, and someone who I consider a thought leader in the entrepreneurship space. So a really great conversation in this episode about how marketers and entrepreneurs can leverage books in their businesses, how AI is becoming a factor, and so much more. So I hope you enjoy, and let's dive in. So Eric, thank you so much for joining the show. I appreciate you being here.
Of course, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so for those who haven't heard of Eric Jorgenson, can you show a quick intro on who you are and what you do?
Yeah, I got a few jobs at the moment. I came out of the venture-backed startup world, but I run Scribe Media day to day as CEO there, which is the largest and the original professional publishing company. I write books on my own, which is how I ended up working with the publisher, and I also do some kind of crazy deep tech venture investing as well.
Yeah. So again, you wrote also the Almanac of Naval Ravikant. I actually have it right here in preparation for this show. And the first question that I want to ask you, oh, you have it right there too, right? So the first question I want to ask you is, I'm a huge fan of Naval Ravikant, right? He was on Joe Rogan. He blew up from there. So I started diving into all of his content. I was like, oh my God, this is the smartest guy I've ever listened to. So what do you think, outside of the book that you wrote there, what is the most applicable stuff that you wrote to entrepreneurs that you think out of all the things in that book? Because there's a lot of good nuggets in there. So if you had to decipher what are your favorite or most applicable parts, what would it be?
The thing that caught my attention the most and that sent me on a deep rabbit hole was the idea of leverage. He's got a few pages on it in there, but I thought that was really fascinating, and there's a whole book yet to be written on that. So I think that's both a really important topic, a really difficult to fully understand one, and something that's worth diving deeper into.
Yeah, he also talks about compounding a lot too. That was a huge one I took away from him. So let's talk about books now. You mentioned that with Scribe Media, that's what you guys do. So how can books be a powerful marketing tool for entrepreneurs or businesses in general?
Oh man, I mean, just think about of all the form factors out there, what is the most trusted? What is the most trustworthy? What is the hardest to produce? What has stood the test of time, right? Books are the answer to all of these things. And the key to building trust and building a relationship, that's at the heart of marketing. And what better way to do that than to create an artifact that someone spends hours of quiet time alone with, that is you presenting the very best of yourself in this timeless, really highly credible, high integrity medium of a book. Not just anybody can write a great book. It takes time, it takes investment, it takes good ideas, it takes hundreds of pages of good ideas to really do the work to produce a great, excellent book is, in my mind, the ultimate demonstration of your expertise.
I agree. I mean, now you have AI in the mix where you can just shotgun a million books at once. But I like to look at Russell Brunson as a good example of this, right? With ClickFunnels. I think ever since ClickFunnels and all those other books that he wrote, think about how much that propelled his career with the launch of, or it was .com Secrets was his book, but ClickFunnels is his company, and how that propelled him to where he's at right now. So that's a prime example.
Yeah, and you get at one of the most important misconceptions, which is people think that they have, entrepreneurs have all the success and then they write a book when they're 79 years old and then die the next day. That's not how it works. If you actually trace the careers of most of the authors that you look at or most of the entrepreneurs, you'll see a book some point early in their career that's an inflection point that becomes a multiplier effect on everything else they ever do. It makes it easier for them to get on podcasts, get on stages. It makes it easier to build trust with their audience. It establishes their credibility. It builds sort of their ownership of a very particular space or industry. And there's no better way to do that than a book. So I encourage you, go trace the careers of some of the greats that you see. You'll see a book somewhere in their past.
Yeah, that's a good point too. So one thing that I've always thought about as attention spans, especially on the internet, they're decreasing, right? People are craving that short form content, TikTok, YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels. So with all these attention spans continuing to shrink, in my opinion, how do you make long form content like a book, as a prime example, still relevant and marketable to the general population?
Yeah, I think there's two answers to that. I think one is serious people always will read. I think reading, there is no substitute for reading, no matter how good podcasts get or audiobooks or anything else like that. Just serious people read, period, end of sentence. The thing that you do need to recognize that you're committing with like dopamine super weapons. And so I think the bar is higher than ever for us as authors and book creators to deliver a fast pace, to cut out the fat, to not expand one idea to fill 300 pages. But, what I tried to do was put a useful idea on every page of every book I ever publish and really keep people flying through it and excited to turn that next page. And I love hearing from people, I've got dog ears, I got highlights on every page. That's the bar, I think. And the bar going up for authors and for books is not a bad thing. That's the way it's always been. Editors and writers have been telling us, cut the fluff, get to the good stuff, start in the middle of the story. This is timeless writing advice. It's no different today. It's just more obvious what you're competing with.
I always look at the quality versus quantity argument when people look at short form versus long form. I mean, I would rather have 5, honestly 10 people read a book that are quality readers, they're now in your ecosystem, versus 1 million views on a short form video on TikTok where all those people aren't relevant to what you're trying to do with getting them in your ecosystem. I think that's a misconception with vanity metrics that people have.
Yeah, people feel good about having 100,000 views on a reel, but they think of what those people just watched 4 hours of TikTok. They don't have a clue who you are or what you do or why. I think you're absolutely right. It's better to have 10 people read a book all the way through to the point where they're truly building trust with you. And if you think about what really drives action, it's depth, it's familiarity, it's expertise. And you want the people that are serious enough to sit down with your book and really understand it and come to understand you and what you do and why. And the number of stories I've heard of people who went searching for a book as a solution to their problem, read the book, said, this is the person, I identify with their solution, they're the expert, and I'm going to pick up the phone and call them and hire them. Millions and millions and millions of dollars come through that channel, but people don't think of it as a traditional marketing channel, which is part of the reason why it's such a good opportunity.
So last question I have on books before we jump into the AI portion. So for me, one book that changed my life, as you just talked about, there's always that one. It was 4 Hour Workweek. So that was one that just kind of spun it for me when I was in corporate America. I related to almost everything Tim Ferriss was talking about. What would that book be for you?
I remember reading 4 Hour Workweek in one sitting, I think at like 18 years old. And I didn't like follow that path, but it did help me start to think differently. So I agree that was an impactful one. I think our timings were probably very similar. Reading Richard Branson's biography as a freshman in college was hugely transformational. I mean, he's just such a big thinker and such a go for it, like positive guy. I loved that. I picked up Poor Charlie's Almanac off my dad's bookshelf when I was 21, and that really defined my reading for years and led me to find kind of my tribe of like fellow Munger nerds. So I think those are probably some of my biggest.
Yeah, that's cool. So let's talk about AI now. Obviously, AI, when it comes to books, is changing a lot of things here. So how do you see AI just changing the way of the book market overall in the next 3 to 5 years? I mean, where do you see it going?
I think it's going to raise the bar. I think I'm a believer that like we should always use the best tool for the job. And I think AI will make mediocre people good. It'll make the good great. It'll make the great prolific. So I'm really excited to see what happens, truly. I think that the bar will go up for excellence. And I'm excited to see like truly great writers use these tools to create more great writing or to create even more great writing faster, I should say. I do think there will be an absolute flood of dog shit writing and just like crap in cardboard.
We're already seeing it to some extent.
We're already seeing it on social. We're already seeing it online. We're already seeing it in the replies. We're definitely going to see it in books. It's a little bit harder to just get a book out, but we're going to see people bang out crappy first drafts. And, a book is a really intricate artifact. Like you have to build a great book, you have to do a lot of small things well at a lot of different levels. Like great books are fractal. You need a good structure. You need a good title. You need a good system. You need a good clarity of thoughts throughout. You need good information of a wide variety that AI is not good at doing all of that yet. You can't just go drop a prompt in ChatGPT and have a great book come out. There's still a lot of pieces of architecture that need to be done and need to be, even if they're generated with AI, generated at a very atomized level and then threaded together well. So I think there's still a lot of work for great authors, great editors, people of great taste, even if those first drafts are coming out of are coming out of AI. I will say it's also an open question on like how the platforms are going to treat generative content, like
Right.
Amazon, others, like their sophisticated tools for tracking, for knowing this. So I think AI assisted is going to be like incredibly important. I think AI generated is like just still going to require a human layer, though that human layer may get thinner and thinner over time. But just like this has been true for 20 years of the internet too, like taste is going to become the thing. It's going to get easier and easier to create. But the taste of knowing what's excellent, what's not, what to cut, what to keep, and what order to put it in is going to be where the true outliers stand out.
I completely agree. And I was talking to someone, something similar with books. It was more of a YouTube, but you look at the content pyramid when it comes to AI. I think books are such an amazing resource that you can pair with AI, because if you have a 100% original book that you wrote, let's say you upload it to a Claude project, custom GPT, Perplexly just came out with a new thing now, Spaces or whatever it's called. You can use that book as your knowledge graph to remix and repurpose that one book into almost any variation of short form content. And it's 100% original. So I think that's a very powerful use case, in my opinion.
I agree, and I think it's also a good argument for writing a book as opposed to just writing the same content in a blog. Like books are the high credibility medium, so when search engines and LLMs are trying to decide who's the credible expert on this thing, what opinion do we take as gospel, what do we serve to people, you want to have the highest credibility, highest polish medium that you possibly can to feed into these LLMs. And I think a book is still that. There is a lot of good content downstream of that book, as well as having the book in the first place elevates you dramatically.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I want to talk about your experience using AI, and just curious in your workflows at Scribe Media. I guess, what's your AI tool stack look like?
I'd say we're experimenting. Like we're in the lab, but we are extremely cautious about rolling out anything to our authors and their projects, because we are such a like premium white glove service that promises the very, very best. And I want no moment where an author feels like they were overpromised and underdelivered. So we are using AI internally, operationally, to accelerate some of our workflows. Right. For the information that we move around inside the organization, meeting notes and updates and things like that. But we are not using AI on any manuscripts or creative that go out the door explicitly today. I think there's opportunities to do it, and we're experimenting with it. But at the end of the day, like our product is extremely premium and extremely craft. And it's just important that we always introduce those things with like extreme care. I'm playing with it a little on the author side of things, but to be honest, my books are taking a backseat to my operating role as CEO these days. So I'm not as close to the cutting edge as I'm sure some of your other guests are.
Yeah. So what about ideation though? So when an author comes up to you and says, hey, I want to use AI for ideation, or I want to use it for just ideation in general, right? Whether it's content, titles, parts of the book. What do you think of AI for ideation as a use case?
Incredible. I think AI assist and AI as a creative partner, just to bring out the best of you and just kind of be a beautiful mirror that you can interact with is incredible. Especially in my opinion, in the new voice modes that are coming out. A lot of people still think of AI just as like the ChatGPT sort of typing interface. And it's just so much more liberating to just like pop open that voice, and while you're driving, just like have a conversation, just start talking of like, I think I should write a book about this. Here's what I'm most confident in. Here's what I'm not. What are a few title ideas? Oh, I like that one. I don't like this one. Let's generate a few more based on this. I'd like it to feel more. And just, it's so relentless. Like it's just always there that you can exhaust yourself having a conversation with this thing, and you'll find yourself just expressing things that you've never been able to express before, because you have such a relentless, high energy, always ends with a question kind of creative partner. And you're going to generate a lot of crap, but that's fine. Like sometimes you just need to generate. And then we go back to our point about taste, which is just how do you have the taste to recognize which of the 100 ideas that you just came up with are truly great and which one you should run with?
Think about the ebook and the podcast market now, especially we have Notebook LM that just came out that disrupted the podcast market. How you can take one hardcover book now over time and use AI to just simply transform that into both an audiobook, and you could chop that up into various podcasts as well, and then try to funnel people into your book or your ecosystem or whatever. That's what's coming to my mind right now.
Yeah. I think there's going to be a lot of downstream content experiments that can come out of like a truly tight, high signal headwater, or lack of a better term, for a book. And these tools are just going to keep getting like more exciting and more interesting. Like it's a very cool thing. I think to some extent being early is important on these, but more important is being great. You know, I'm a deep believer, just use the right tool for the job, find out what just became recently available. But if you perform at a really high level of quality and you generate content like that, that's what'll really stand out, and that's what'll make a difference in the long run.
Absolutely. So, Eric, this is the Marketing Quacks podcast after all. So if there was one quack or gimmick in terms of authors of what you're working with, what would that be, that biggest quack for you in your industry?
Like something that I hate that turns me off? Is that
yeah, something that you
question?
Hate, makes your blood boil.
I think there's a whole set of people who think the craft of marketing is more important than the craft of the product. And that whole genre pisses me off and I hate it. I think the actual product being sold is the most important thing in the long run. And I see a lot of people in the world of marketing who pride themselves on marketing, who take a lot more pride in their promises than their delivery. And I see that a lot in the world of publishing. And there's a lot of people who just live their whole lives trying to find ways to charge more and deliver less, and rather than try to solve a problem for the customer and do it at the highest level and then just like allow their work to speak for themselves. That's what I've always tried to do. That's what Scribe has always tried to do. And I think that that's, you know, the moral and soulful path and the best way to conduct yourself in the world. And I think there's plenty of marketers that could lean into that a little harder.
Yeah, I think you just exposed the entire business model of SaaS companies, in my opinion.
I think there's good and bad in every industry and every variety. There's some mission critical SaaS out there where the software is truly like enabling magic that has never been done before in human history. And there's also some people selling, SaaS or courses or all kinds of things that are just pure grift, and they are talented marketers, and that's how they get away with the grift. But man, if they just applied themselves to building a better product, the world would be a better place.
Completely agree with you. Well, Eric, I know you're short on time, and this has been fun. Can you say what's next for Eric Jorgenson?
Yeah, I got a third book coming out soon. That'll be the book of Elon Musk. It's all of his most important, most useful, timeless ideas. I think that's really going to come together beautifully and be a guide to purpose and success. I'm going to keep grinding away on Scribe and hope to liberate more authors from the clutches of traditional publishing and see the industry move more and more in this direction, help some authors own their IP, own their full upside, create beautiful books. I just love the craft of book building and helping people become authors. That was a life-changing portal for me to go through, and it's a joy to be able to help others through that now.
Awesome. Yeah. Where do you want me to direct people to kind of find you online and learn more about what you're doing?
The company is scribemedia.com, and you can find all my personal writing and projects on ejorgenson.com. I welcome you to reach out to me or us at either or both of those, depending on what we can do for you. We love to be of service.
Awesome. Well, Eric, thank you so much again for your time and joining this episode of the Marketing Quacks podcast. Be sure to tune in again for the next episode.
Appreciate you having me.